He buried his mother that morning. By sunset, something impossible was waiting for him at home. The last car disappeared down the narrow country road as evening settled over Ashford Creek, Montana. The funeral was over. The flowers were already beginning to wilt in the cold autumn air. The church doors had closed. The condolences had been spoken. The casseroles had been delivered. And for the first time in his 56 years, Daniel Brooks had no one left to call family. The retired Navy SEAL stood beside his pickup truck for a long moment, staring at the distant hills glowing beneath a fading orange sky. Wind carried the scent of pine needles and fallen leaves across the cemetery. Somewhere nearby, a flock of geese crossed overhead on their journey south. Life moved forward. It always did, even when people wished it would stop. Daniel finally climbed into the truck and began the drive home. The old farmhouse sat nearly 5 miles outside town, surrounded by open fields and towering cottonwoods that had watched over the property for generations. His mother had lived there for 42 years. Every corner carried her presence. Every room carried a memory. The porch swing she loved. The blue curtains she refused to replace. The ceramic mug that somehow remained on the kitchen counter no matter how many times Daniel moved it. Darkness was beginning to settle when he pulled into the gravel driveway. The house looked exactly the same as it had that morning. Yet everything felt different. The front porch light glowed softly beside the door. His mother had always left it on. Daniel sat behind the wheel for several seconds before gathering enough strength to step outside. The air felt colder now. The silence felt heavier. He climbed the porch steps and unlocked the door. The familiar scent of cedar wood, coffee, and old books greeted him immediately. For a brief moment, his heart betrayed him. For a brief moment, he expected to hear her voice from the kitchen. "Daniel, you are late." But the house remained silent. He closed the door behind him and stood still. Across the living room sat the chair. Her chair, positioned beside the window exactly where she had left it. A knitted blanket rested over one arm. Reading glasses sat on the small table beside it. Everything looked ready for her return. Daniel slowly crossed the room. His chest tightened. He reached down and touched the blanket. The fabric still carried traces of her perfume. Lavender. Warm and familiar. The smell nearly broke him. He sat in the chair opposite hers and stared at the empty space. Minutes passed. Perhaps longer. Outside, the wind rattled dry leaves across the porch. Inside, the old grandfather clock continued its steady ticking. Then something caught his attention. A small wooden jewelry box sat on the side table. Daniel frowned. He knew that box. His mother kept her most treasured possessions inside. Family photographs. Letters. Small keepsakes collected over decades. He leaned forward and opened it. The contents were exactly as he remembered. Except for one thing. The necklace was gone. Daniel froze. Slowly, he searched through the box again. Then a third time. The necklace was not there. His pulse quickened. It was impossible. The silver necklace had belonged to his grandmother before passing to his mother. She wore it nearly every day, even during her final weeks. Daniel distinctly remembered seeing it shortly before the funeral arrangements began. Yet now it had vanished. He stood and searched the room. The bedroom. The bathroom. The kitchen. Every drawer. Every cabinet. Every place she might have left it. Nothing. 2 hours later, exhaustion settled heavily over him. The necklace remained missing. Daniel finally returned to the living room and sank into a chair. Moonlight filtered through the window beside his mother's empty seat. The silence felt enormous. He rubbed his face and stared into the darkness. Someone must have taken it. There was no other explanation. Yet who would steal a family heirloom during a funeral? The thought disturbed him more than he wanted to admit. Outside, a distant dog barked somewhere beyond the fields. Then another sound followed. Softer. Almost like a faint whimper carried on the wind. Daniel glanced toward the window. The darkness beyond the glass revealed nothing. The sound disappeared as quickly as it came. He leaned back and closed his eyes. Tomorrow, he told himself. Tomorrow he would start asking questions. Tomorrow he would find out what happened to the necklace. But deep inside, a strange feeling had already begun to grow. A feeling he could not explain. As though the missing necklace was not lost at all. As though it was exactly where someone wanted it to be. 3 days passed, yet the necklace remained missing. Daniel asked neighbors. He spoke with relatives. He called the funeral home. Nobody had seen it. Nobody remembered touching it. Each answer deepened the mystery. By the 4th morning, Exhaustion had settled into his bones like cold rain. Autumn sunlight spilled across the farmhouse kitchen as he stood beside the sink, holding a mug of coffee that had already gone cold. The house felt quieter every day. His mother's laughter no longer echoed from room to room. The old radio remained silent. Even the grandfather clock seemed slower somehow. Daniel glanced toward the empty chair beside the window. The sight still hurt. He turned away and decided to take a walk. Fresh air had always helped him think. The gravel road behind the property led toward the cemetery and eventually disappeared into a stretch of woodland that bordered the valley. His mother had loved those woods. As a boy, he had followed her along the trails countless times. The memories followed him now as dry leaves crunched beneath his boots. The sky was clear. A cool breeze carried the scent of pine and distant wood smoke. For the first time in days, his mind felt calm. Then he heard it, a soft sound drifting from somewhere ahead. A tiny whimper. Then another. Daniel stopped. The sound came from beyond a cluster of trees near the edge of an open field. He stepped closer. The whimper returned. This time he recognized it immediately. Puppies. He pushed through the brush and entered a small clearing. What he saw made him freeze. A German shepherd mother stood near an old fallen log. Two tiny puppies pressed against her legs. The dog looked healthy but cautious. Her ears stood alert. Her amber eyes locked onto Daniel. For several seconds, neither moved. The wind stirred the grass between them. One of the puppies stumbled forward before tumbling clumsily into a pile of leaves. The sight almost made Daniel smile. Then his eyes shifted upward. The breath caught in his throat. Around the German shepherd's neck hung a silver chain. Sunlight flashed across the metal. Daniel stared. His heart began pounding. No, it could not be. Yet he already knew. The chain was unmistakable. The small oval pendant. The delicate engraving near the clasp. The tiny scratch crossing one corner. He had seen it his entire life. It belonged to his mother. Daniel took one careful step forward. The dog did not growl. She did not retreat. She simply watched him. "How do you have that?" he whispered. The puppies remained close to her side. One looked up curiously. The other buried its nose against its mother's fur. Daniel moved another step closer. The necklace swung gently in the breeze. There was no doubt now. It was the same necklace. The same family heirloom that had vanished from the house. His pulse raced. Questions flooded his mind. Had someone placed it on the dog? Had his mother known this animal? None of it made sense. The German shepherd tilted her head slightly. The gesture felt strangely familiar. Almost human. Daniel lowered himself slowly to one knee. "Easy, girl." The dog continued watching him. Then something unexpected happened. She turned and began walking away. Not running. Not fleeing. Walking. After several yards, she stopped and looked back. Directly at him. Daniel frowned. The puppies hurried after her. Again the dog paused. Again she looked back. It felt deliberate. Intentional. As though she wanted to make certain he was following. A strange feeling settled over him. Years of military experience had taught him to trust instinct. And every instinct he possessed told him this was not a coincidence. The German shepherd started moving again. The puppies followed. Daniel remained frozen for a moment before taking a step forward. Then another. Somewhere deep inside, curiosity was beginning to overpower grief. The dog disappeared between the trees. Just before vanishing from sight, she glanced back one final time. The silver necklace caught the sunlight. And in that single moment, Daniel realized the missing necklace was not the mystery anymore. The dog was. The German shepherd disappeared between the trees, but Daniel could still see flashes of movement ahead. A black and tan shape. Two small puppies stumbling through fallen leaves. He followed slowly, careful not to startle them. The afternoon sun filtered through towering pines, painting the forest floor in patches of gold and shadow. Every few yards the mother dog stopped and looked back. Not with fear, not with suspicion, with expectation, as though she needed to know he was still there. Daniel had spent decades trusting instincts. During his years as a Navy SEAL, that instinct had often meant the difference between danger and safety. Now the same feeling settled deep inside his chest. This dog wanted something from him. The trail grew narrower. Branches brushed against his jacket. The scent of damp earth mixed with pine needles and distant wood smoke drifting from somewhere beyond the hills. One of the puppies let out a tiny bark before tripping over a tree root. Daniel almost laughed. The little thing scrambled back to its feet and hurried after its mother. For a moment, the sadness that had followed him since the funeral eased. The forest felt alive again. The mother dog paused beside a large fallen cedar. Sunlight struck the silver necklace hanging from her neck. The pendant gleamed brightly. Daniel could see every detail now. The tiny engraving his grandfather had commissioned nearly 60 years earlier. The faint scratch near the edge from when he accidentally dropped it as a teenager. There was no mistake. It belonged to his mother. Yet seeing it around the neck of a German shepherd only deepened the mystery. He took another careful step forward. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. The dog tilted her head. Then she turned and continued deeper into the woods. The path began climbing uphill. Daniel followed. Minutes passed. Maybe 20. Maybe 30. Time felt different beneath the trees. The farther they traveled, the more unfamiliar the terrain became. He had explored these woods as a child. He thought he knew every trail. Yet he had never been here before. The mother dog moved with confidence. The puppies stayed close behind her. Occasionally one would stop to investigate a leaf or stick, only to rush forward again after realizing the others had moved on. Daniel noticed something else. Despite caring for two young puppies, the dog appeared healthy. Her coat was clean. Her movements were strong. Someone had been helping her, or had helped her recently. The thought lingered in his mind. Then the dog stopped again. This time she stood completely still. Daniel slowed. The forest suddenly felt quieter. Even the breeze seemed to fade. Ahead stood a narrow clearing surrounded by towering pines. At the center rested something unexpected. A cabin. Daniel stared. The structure looked old. Very old. Weathered wooden walls leaned slightly beneath the weight of years. Moss covered portions of the roof. One window was cracked. Another had been boarded shut long ago. Yet the place remained standing. Somehow. Quietly. Hidden from the world. Daniel frowned. He had never seen this cabin before. Not once. And yet it sat less than 2 miles from property he had known his entire life. The German shepherd walked toward the porch. The puppies followed. She climbed the steps and sat beside the door. Waiting. Daniel approached slowly. His boots creaked against old wooden boards. The cabin smelled of pine sap, rain, and time. He glanced toward the dog. She remained seated beside the entrance. Calm. Patient. Watching him. Then something caught his eye. Hanging beside the door was a rusted nail. Attached to it was a faded photograph fluttering gently in the breeze. Daniel reached for it. His hand froze before touching the paper. His heart skipped. The woman smiling in the photograph was his mother. Younger. Healthier. Standing beneath summer sunlight. And beside her sat a German shepherd. Not the same dog. It could not be. The photograph was too old. Yet the resemblance was astonishing. The same intelligent eyes. The same posture. The same calm presence. Daniel stared at the image in disbelief. The date written in one corner made his breath catch. The picture had been taken only 6 weeks before his mother's death. He slowly lowered the photograph. The mother dog remained beside the door, her amber eyes fixed on him. The puppies curled against her legs. The necklace glimmered softly in the fading sunlight. And for the first time since this strange journey began, Daniel realized the dog had not led him into the forest by accident. She had brought him here for a reason. Daniel stood motionless on the weathered porch. The photograph trembled slightly in his hand as a cool breeze moved through the clearing. His mother's smile seemed almost alive beneath the fading afternoon light. She stood beside the German shepherd in the picture with one hand resting gently on its shoulder. There was peace in her expression, a kind of peace Daniel had not seen during her final months. Slowly, he turned the photograph over. His breath caught again. Written on the back in familiar handwriting were 4 simple words. For when Daniel returns. The world seemed to fall silent. Even the wind disappeared. Daniel stared at the message for several seconds before looking toward the mother dog sitting beside the cabin door. She remained calm. The 2 puppies curled against her side, completely relaxed. It was as if they had reached the destination they had been searching for all along. Daniel swallowed hard. "What did she leave here?" he whispered. The German shepherd blinked slowly. Then she stood and nudged the cabin door with her nose. The old wood creaked inward. Daniel felt a chill move through him. He stepped inside. The cabin smelled of cedar, dust, and old paper. Shafts of sunlight slipped through cracks in the walls, illuminating floating particles that drifted lazily through the air. The interior was small. A wooden table, 2 chairs, a stone fireplace. Shelves lined one wall. Nothing appeared valuable. Nothing explained the necklace. Yet every corner carried traces of someone who had spent time here. Daniel moved cautiously through the room. The floorboards groaned beneath his boots. On the table sat an oil lamp, a stack of books, and a small ceramic mug. His heart tightened when he recognized the mug immediately. It belonged to his mother. He remembered buying it for her 15 years earlier during a Christmas trip to Wyoming. The blue glaze had chipped near the handle. The same chip was still there. Daniel gently touched the rim. The realization settled over him like a wave. His mother had been here. Not once. Not accidentally. Repeatedly. The evidence surrounded him. Behind him, the puppies wandered into the cabin and began exploring. One investigated the corner near the fireplace. The other curled up beside an old rug. Their mother remained near the doorway, watching quietly. Daniel approached the shelves. More clues waited there. Several veterinary books, dog training manuals, a few war novels. Then he noticed a notebook resting between two binders. The cover was faded from age. His pulse quickened as he reached for it. The first page revealed familiar handwriting. His mother's handwriting. Daniel lowered himself into a chair. For a moment, he simply stared at the page. Outside, leaves rustled softly beyond the doorway. Inside, the cabin felt frozen in time. Finally, he began reading. The first entries were simple observations. Weather conditions, notes about forest trails, lists of supplies. Then the subject changed. October 17th. Found a frightened young shepherd near the creek today. Thin but healthy. Smart eyes. Reminds me of someone. Daniel blinked. He turned the page. More entries followed. October 23rd. She came back. Brought her food again. November 2nd. She trusts me enough to sit beside me now. November 19th. I think she is going to be a mother. Daniel's hands trembled slightly. The German shepherd. Luna. His mother had known her. Months before anyone else. He continued reading. Each page revealed another piece of a hidden life. A life his mother had never mentioned. She had spent nearly a year caring for the dog, bringing food, building trust, creating a bond, and somehow she had kept it entirely secret. Daniel leaned back slowly. Confusion mixed with grief. Why had she never told him? Why hide something that clearly meant so much to her? Then another entry caught his attention. It was dated only 7 weeks before her death. Luna followed me all the way to the cabin today. She sat beside me while I watched the sunset. Sometimes animals understand loneliness better than people do. Daniel closed his eyes. The words felt painfully familiar. Since the funeral, loneliness had followed him everywhere. Yet somehow his mother had faced her own loneliness in this hidden place. Not alone, but with this dog. A soft sound interrupted his thoughts. One of the puppies had wandered beneath the table. Its tiny paw struck something hidden underneath. A small wooden box slid partially into view. Daniel opened his eyes. The puppy stared back innocently. Then he looked at the box. His heart began beating faster. Slowly, he leaned forward. The German shepherd rose immediately and stepped closer. Not protective, not nervous, expectant, as though she had been waiting for this moment. Daniel reached beneath the table and pulled the box into the light. Dust covered the lid. A simple brass latch held it closed. And carved into the top, in his mother's unmistakable handwriting, were 3 words. Open this last. Daniel stared at the wooden box resting on the table. Dust covered the lid, yet the words carved into the surface remained perfectly clear. Open this last. For several seconds he could not move. The cabin seemed to hold its breath around him. Outside, the forest remained quiet beneath the fading afternoon sun. Inside, the puppies curled together near the fireplace while the German shepherd sat beside the table, her amber eyes fixed on him. Waiting. Daniel slowly brushed dust from the lid. The wood felt smooth beneath his fingertips. Familiar. His mother had carved small messages into wood for years. Garden markers. Christmas ornaments. Handmade gifts. Seeing those words now felt like hearing her voice from another room. He swallowed hard and lifted the brass latch. The metal clicked softly. The sound echoed through the cabin. Carefully, he opened the box. Inside rested a bundle of folded papers tied together with a faded blue ribbon. Beneath them sat several photographs and a small silver key. Daniel reached first for the photographs. His hands trembled slightly. The top image showed his mother sitting on the cabin porch during spring. Sunlight illuminated her silver hair. Beside her sat the German shepherd. Younger, leaner, yet unmistakably the same dog. Luna. Daniel studied the picture closely. His mother looked genuinely happy. Not the polite smile she often showed others. This smile reached her eyes. The kind of smile that came from peace. The next photograph revealed something even more surprising. His mother knelt beside Luna near a blanket hidden among wildflowers. Tiny newborn puppies rested against the dog's side. Daniel's breath caught. 2 puppies. The same 2 now sleeping a few feet away from him. The realization settled over him slowly. His mother had been there the day they were born. She had witnessed the beginning of their lives. He lowered the photographs and reached for the papers bound by the ribbon. The first pages appeared to be journal entries. Each one carried dates from the previous year. As he read, an entirely different version of his mother's final months began to emerge. She wrote about finding Luna near the creek during a snowstorm. She wrote about bringing food every morning. She wrote about sitting on the cabin porch with the dog during long evenings while watching the sunset over the valley. Page after page revealed a friendship she had never mentioned. Yet the deeper Daniel read, the more he understood why. His mother had known her health was failing. Doctors had already begun discussing treatments. Family members worried constantly. Everyone focused on appointments and test results. But here, inside these pages, he found a woman who refused to spend her remaining time consumed by fear. Instead, she chose kindness. She chose purpose. She chose a frightened dog who needed help. Daniel turned another page. A small note had been tucked between the entries. The handwriting immediately caught his attention. Luna follows me everywhere now. I think she worries when I leave. Sometimes she sits beside me for hours without making a sound. I never realized how comforting that could be. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. A lump formed in his throat. He remembered how lonely his mother became after his father passed away years earlier. Yet somehow she had found companionship hidden within these woods. Not from another person. From a dog. The next journal entry changed everything. If Daniel ever finds this place, it means Luna trusted him enough to bring him here. If that happens, then I know I made the right decision. Daniel stared at the words. Slowly, he looked toward the German shepherd. Luna remained exactly where she was. Calm, patient, watching. It suddenly became clear that none of this had happened by accident. The necklace, the photographs, the cabin. Every step had been leading here. Every step had been planned. Daniel continued reading. The final pages described Luna's pregnancy. His mother documented each milestone. The first signs, the preparations, the birth of the puppies, the joy she felt watching them grow stronger each week. Then one entry stopped him completely. I gave Luna the necklace today. The family necklace. If anyone finds it on her, they will know she belongs here. They will know she is family. Daniel lowered the journal slowly. The room blurred for a moment. The missing necklace had never been stolen. No stranger had taken it. No thief had entered the house. His mother had placed it around Luna's neck herself. Not as jewelry. Not as a keepsake. As a message. A trail. A way to guide him here after she was gone. Tears filled Daniel's eyes. He stared at the sleeping puppies beside the fireplace. Then at Luna. The dog slowly walked forward and rested her head against his knee. Daniel placed a hand gently on her neck. The silver pendant glimmered softly beneath the cabin light. For the first time since the funeral, the emptiness inside him felt slightly smaller. Yet as he glanced back into the box, he noticed something tucked beneath the remaining papers. A sealed envelope. Across the front, written in his mother's familiar handwriting, were 4 words that made his heart stop once again. For my son Daniel. Daniel stared at the envelope for a long time before touching it. The cabin had grown quieter as evening settled beyond the trees. Soft amber light filtered through the dusty windows. The puppies slept beside the fireplace, curled together in a small bundle of warmth. Luna rested near his chair, her head lowered, her breathing calm and steady. Everything felt strangely still, as if the entire forest understood this moment mattered. Daniel carefully lifted the envelope from the box. His mother's handwriting stretched across the front in graceful blue ink. For my son Daniel. The sight alone nearly broke him. He traced the letters with his thumb. He had not received a handwritten letter from her in years. Not because she stopped writing, but because life became busy. Phone calls replaced notes. Quick visits replaced long conversations. Now he found himself wishing for one more ordinary afternoon. One more cup of coffee at her kitchen table. One more chance to listen. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the envelope. Inside rested several folded pages. He unfolded the first sheet, and immediately recognized the familiar scent of lavender. Somehow it remained after all this time. Daniel closed his eyes briefly before beginning to read. My dear son, if you are reading this, then Luna found you. I know that sounds impossible, but I have learned never to underestimate that dog. A faint smile appeared on Daniel's face despite the tears gathering in his eyes. He continued, First, I need you to know something. I was never afraid. Not at the end. Not during the treatments. Not during the long nights when the house felt too quiet. I had good memories. I had a good life. Most importantly, I had you. Daniel lowered the letter for a moment. Emotion tightened his chest. Outside, wind moved gently through the pine trees. The sound reminded him of childhood evenings spent on the porch listening to his mother tell stories beneath the stars. He returned to the page. There were days when I worried about you. Not because you were weak. Because you were strong for too long. Strong people often carry burdens they never share. They learn how to survive. But sometimes they forget how to live. Daniel stared at the words. The truth of them landed heavily. Since retiring from the Navy, he had drifted through life more than he cared to admit. One year became another. Friendships faded. Relationships never lasted. The world grew smaller. And somehow loneliness became normal. The letter continued. Then Luna appeared. At first she needed food. Then she needed shelter. Later she needed someone to sit beside her while she waited for her puppies to arrive. I thought I was helping her. The truth is she was helping me. Daniel glanced toward the German shepherd. Luna had not moved. Her amber eyes met his briefly before settling once more on the floor. There was something peaceful about her presence. Something grounding. He continued reading. The necklace was never meant to stay locked inside a jewelry box. Family treasures are not valuable because of silver or gold. They matter because they remind us who we are. I placed it around Luna's neck because I knew she would eventually lead you here. If she trusted you, then you would find everything else. Daniel swallowed hard. Tears blurred the page. He wiped his eyes and kept going. There is one thing I need to ask of you. It is not about the house. It is not about money. It is not about possessions. It is about Luna and her puppies. They will need someone when I am gone. Someone patient. Someone kind. Someone who understands what it feels like to lose family. Daniel stopped reading. His vision clouded again. The puppies shifted in their sleep near the fireplace. One let out a tiny whimper before settling against its sibling. Luna immediately lifted her head and looked toward them. The instinctive concern in her eyes said everything. She was a mother trying to protect what remained of her world. Daniel looked back at the letter. The final page waited. His heart pounded as he unfolded it. The handwriting appeared slightly shakier than the previous pages. If you are reading this, then I am already gone. But love does not leave the way people do. It stays behind in places. In memories. In old photographs. In cabins hidden among trees. Sometimes it stays behind in dogs and puppies. If Luna chooses you, please do not walk away. Daniel finished the final line and lowered the paper slowly. Silence filled the cabin. Yet it no longer felt empty. It felt full. Full of memories. Full of love. Full of something he had not felt since the funeral. Purpose. Then a sudden sound broke the stillness. One of the puppies had wandered toward the back corner of the cabin. Tiny paws scratched against an old wooden panel hidden behind a shelf. The board shifted slightly. Daniel frowned. He looked up. Luna was already watching him. And for the second time since arriving at the cabin, he had the unmistakable feeling that another secret was waiting to be found. Daniel slowly stood from the chair. The letter remained in his hand, but his attention had shifted toward the back corner of the cabin. The puppy scratched at the loose wooden panel again. A soft scraping sound echoed through the room. Then the tiny dog looked back at him with innocent curiosity before pawing at the board one more time. Luna remained perfectly still, watching, waiting. Daniel felt the same sensation he had experienced since entering the forest. The feeling that unseen pieces were quietly falling into place around him. He crossed the room and knelt beside the wall. Years of weather had darkened the wood, but one section appeared slightly newer than the surrounding boards. He pressed against it gently. Nothing happened. Then he tried again with a little more pressure. The panel shifted inward with a faint creak. Dust drifted into the air. Daniel carefully pulled the board aside. Behind it rested a narrow compartment hidden between the wall supports. His pulse quickened. Reaching inside, he discovered a small canvas pouch and a leather-bound journal. The pouch felt surprisingly heavy. He set both items on the table and returned the panel to its place. The puppies wandered over immediately, sniffing curiously at the discoveries. Daniel smiled faintly. It was the first genuine smile he had felt since the funeral. He opened the canvas pouch first. Inside rested dozens of photographs. Some showed his mother sitting beside Luna on the porch. Others captured the puppies growing week by week. In one image, his mother laughed while both puppies climbed awkwardly into her lap. In another, Luna sat proudly beside her beneath a summer sunset. Daniel studied each photograph carefully. Every image revealed a happiness he had never fully seen. Not because she hid it, because he had been too busy living his own life to notice. The realization hurt, yet it also brought comfort. His mother had not spent her final year alone. She had found purpose. She had found companionship. Most importantly, she had found joy. Daniel reached for the leather journal next. The cover was worn smooth from use. Opening it carefully, he discovered entries written almost daily. Unlike the earlier notebook, these pages felt more personal, more intimate. They read less like observations and more like conversations. October 26th. Luna followed me all the way home today. She sat by the mailbox until sunset. November 10th. The puppies are growing stronger. I think Daniel would laugh if he saw them trying to chase leaves. December 1st. Some days my body feels tired. Then Luna arrives, and somehow the day becomes easier. Daniel paused. His throat tightened again. He continued reading. Page after page revealed thoughts his mother had never spoken aloud. Memories of raising him after his father died. Stories from his childhood. Small moments she cherished. A fishing trip beside the river. A broken bicycle he spent weeks repairing. A Christmas morning when he stayed awake all night waiting for sunrise. Daniel found himself smiling through tears. He had forgotten many of those moments. She never had. Then he reached an entry dated only 3 weeks before her death. The words immediately captured his attention. Today Luna brought the puppies to the big oak tree. They played for nearly an hour. I watched them and realized something important. Love survives through what we leave behind. Sometimes that is family. Sometimes it is kindness. Sometimes it is simply showing up every day for someone who needs you. Daniel read the passage twice. Then a third time. Outside, the forest darkened beneath the approaching evening. Golden sunlight faded into shades of amber and blue. The cabin felt warm despite the cooling air. Luna had moved closer now. She rested beside his chair while the puppies slept against her side. The small family looked peaceful. Complete. Suddenly Daniel understood why his mother had hidden all of this. She had not been keeping a secret. She had been building a bridge. A bridge between her life and whatever came after. A bridge she hoped he would eventually cross. He turned another page and found a folded map tucked inside the journal. Curious, he unfolded it across the table. A section of the forest had been marked in red ink. Several trails circled a location near the northern ridge. Beside the mark, his mother had written a short note. One last place. One last lesson. Daniel stared at the words. His heartbeat quickened. The map clearly pointed somewhere deeper within the woods. Somewhere beyond the cabin. Luna lifted her head and looked directly at him. The timing felt impossible. Almost deliberate. Daniel glanced from the map to the dog. Then back again. Outside, the first evening stars appeared beyond the treetops. The forest waited in silence. And somewhere beyond those darkening pines, another piece of his mother's story was waiting to be found. Daniel remained seated at the table long after darkness settled beyond the cabin windows. The map lay open before him. The red circle seemed almost to glow beneath the lantern light. One last place. One last lesson. His mother's final words echoed quietly through his thoughts. Across the room, Luna slept with the puppies curled against her side. The sight felt strangely comforting. For the first time since the funeral, the emptiness inside him no longer felt endless. It still hurt, but the pain now shared space with something else. Curiosity, purpose, hope. By dawn, a thin layer of frost covered the clearing outside the cabin. Daniel stepped onto the porch carrying the map folded inside his jacket pocket. The morning air smelled of pine and cold earth. Pale sunlight filtered through the trees. Luna was already awake. The puppies tumbled clumsily around her feet, chasing each other through the grass. When Daniel approached, the German shepherd immediately looked toward the northern ridge, the exact direction marked on the map. Daniel could not help smiling. "I suppose we are going together," he said softly. Luna wagged her tail once. The journey began shortly after sunrise. The trail climbed steadily through the forest. Fallen leaves covered the ground in shades of gold and amber. Every now and then the puppies became distracted by a squirrel or fluttering leaf, forcing Luna to guide them back toward the path. Daniel found himself watching them more than the trail itself. The little family moved with a closeness that felt almost sacred. No matter how far the puppies wandered, they always returned to their mother. No matter how many obstacles appeared, Luna never stopped watching over them. The lesson felt obvious now. His mother had seen something beautiful in that devotion. Perhaps that was why she loved them so much. Nearly an hour later, the trees began to thin. The ridge emerged ahead. Daniel unfolded the map again. The markings pointed toward a large oak tree standing alone near the crest of the hill. It was impossible to miss. Its massive branches stretched across the sky like open arms. The moment Luna saw the tree, she quickened her pace. Daniel followed. As he approached, he noticed something unusual. Beneath the oak sat a weathered wooden bench. Time had faded the wood silver gray. Moss covered portions of the legs. Yet it remained sturdy. Someone had built it with care. Daniel stepped closer. His breath caught. Carved into the backrest were two initials. MB. His mother's initials. Slowly he sat down. The valley stretched below him. Rolling hills. Forests glowing beneath autumn sunlight. A distant river reflecting silver beneath the morning sky. The view was breathtaking. Daniel understood immediately why his mother loved this place. Luna settled beside the bench. The puppies curled together beneath it. For several minutes nobody moved. The world felt peaceful. Then Daniel noticed something tucked beneath the seat. A small metal box secured by a simple latch. His pulse quickened. He carefully removed it and placed it on his lap. Inside rested several items. A photograph, a folded document, and a final note written in his mother's hand. Daniel opened the note first. My dear son, if you have reached this place, then you have already found what matters most. Not this box, not the necklace, not even the memories I left behind. You found connection. You found purpose. You found family. Daniel paused. The words blurred through gathering tears. He continued reading. For years I worried you would spend your life alone. You became so good at surviving that you forgot how to belong. Then Luna arrived. She reminded me that every living creature needs a place to call home, even the strongest among us. Daniel lowered the letter. Wind moved gently through the oak branches overhead. The sound resembled a distant whisper. He unfolded the document next. It was a property transfer. His mother had legally protected the cabin and surrounding acreage as a wildlife sanctuary. Included within the paperwork was a handwritten request. Please keep this place safe for Luna and her family. Daniel stared at the page. Suddenly, everything became clear. The cabin, the necklace, the journal, the photographs. None of it had been about preserving the past. His mother had been building something for the future. She had trusted him to continue what she started. Luna slowly approached and rested her head against his shoulder. Daniel wrapped an arm around her neck. The puppies immediately climbed into his lap. Their tiny tails wagged furiously. He laughed for the first time in weeks. A real laugh. Warm and unguarded. Looking across the valley, Daniel realized the decision he had been avoiding since the funeral no longer felt difficult. He would not sell the farmhouse. He would not leave. Some paths lead people away from home. Others bring them back. And sitting beneath the oak tree beside a loyal mother dog and her two puppies, Daniel finally understood which path was his. Winter slowly gave way to spring. Snow melted from the hills surrounding Ashford Creek. Fresh green shoots emerged across the fields. The long silence that once filled the farmhouse gradually disappeared. Life returned one small moment at a time. 5 months after the funeral, Daniel stood on the front porch holding a cup of coffee as morning sunlight spread across the valley. The air smelled of damp earth and blooming wildflowers. Birds filled the cottonwood trees with song. Behind him, the screen door opened and closed with familiar rhythm. 2 energetic young dogs raced across the porch and leaped into the yard. They were no longer tiny puppies. Scout had grown into a confident explorer who investigated everything. Rosie remained curious about the world, but never wandered far from home. Daniel watched them chase each other through the grass. Their happiness felt contagious. Luna followed more slowly. She carried herself with the calm confidence of a mother who had guided her family safely through difficult seasons. Around her neck hung the silver necklace. The morning sun caught the pendant, and sent a brief flash of light across the porch. Daniel smiled every time he saw it, not because of its value, because of what it represented. The farmhouse looked different now. The flower beds had been restored. The fence had been repaired. Fresh paint brightened the front porch. Even the old swing had been fixed. For the first time in years, the property felt alive. Neighbors noticed the change. Visitors stopped by more often. Children occasionally came to play with the dogs. The isolation that once surrounded Daniel had slowly faded. One Saturday afternoon, he drove into town for supplies. As he stepped out of the hardware store, an elderly woman approached him. She had attended his mother's funeral months earlier. "You look different," she said with a gentle smile. Daniel laughed softly. "Do I?" She nodded. "Happier." The answer stayed with him long after he returned home. That evening, he found himself sitting in his mother's chair beside the window. Sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. Luna rested nearby. Scout and Rosie slept together on the rug. The grandfather clock continued its steady ticking. Yet the room no longer felt empty. Daniel glanced toward the bookshelf where his mother's photograph now stood beside one of Luna and the puppies. Two parts of the same story. Two chapters connected by kindness. He thought about everything that had happened. The missing necklace. The hidden cabin. The journals. The letters. The trail of clues left behind by a woman who understood something important about love. Love was never really about holding on. It was about passing something forward. Outside, the first stars appeared above the fields. Daniel rose from the chair and stepped onto the porch. The evening breeze carried the scent of pine from the distant forest. Somewhere beyond those trees stood the cabin. The sanctuary remained protected exactly as his mother had hoped. He visited often, sometimes alone, more often with Luna and the dogs. The place never felt abandoned. It felt remembered. Luna joined him at the porch railing. Scout and Rosie followed moments later. The three dogs settled beside him as darkness slowly covered the valley. Daniel rested one hand on Luna's shoulder. She leaned gently against him. No words were necessary. The connection spoke for itself. His eyes drifted toward the empty rocking chair positioned beside the porch swing. For months, seeing it had been painful. Tonight it felt different. Peaceful. The chair remained empty, yet somehow it no longer symbolized loss. It symbolized presence, memory, gratitude. The best parts of the people we love never truly disappear. They remain in habits, in stories, in places. Sometimes they remain in a dog who refuses to give up on a lonely man. A shooting star crossed the horizon. Daniel watched it vanish into the darkness. Then he smiled. Not because the grief was gone. Grief never disappears completely. It simply changes shape. It becomes softer, gentler, easier to carry. Luna lifted her head toward the sky. Scout and Rosie curled beside her. The silver pendant glimmered one final time beneath the porch light. Daniel looked at the small family gathered around him and understood the last lesson his mother had wanted him to learn. Some people leave behind money. Some leave behind land. Some leave behind possessions. His mother left behind something far greater. She left behind a reason to keep opening the front door every morning. She left behind companionship, purpose, family. And as the farmhouse settled quietly beneath the stars, surrounded by loyal paws and the echoes of enduring love, Daniel finally felt what he had been searching for since the day he stood beside her grave. He was home.